Welcome to the ACF Chefs Forum. We appreciate all of you turning in today for this webinar with a focus on cannabis rosin for culinary cannabis infusion. The American Culinary Federation is excited to have an expert here with information just for you, the leaders of the food service industry. Before we begin, as a note, we will be answering as many of your questions as possible after the presentation. Please use the chat function to collaborate with other viewers and use the Q&A function anytime during the session to pose questions to today's speakers. Let's get the discussion going on the chat by telling us where you're from and where you're tuning in from today. I'm Christopher Tanner, American Culinary Federation's Executive Director. With cannabis becoming recreationally legal in much of the U.S., it's also finding its way to the dinner table. We've seen the explosive growth of THC-laced edibles with gummies, chocolates, and baked goods over the past couple of years now. Chefs and beverage makers are experimenting with infusions to compose dishes and drinks. According to Data Essential, millennials are driving interest in the consumption of products containing both cannabis and non-high-inducing CBD, which is said to relieve anxiety and can be found in everything from cocktails to donuts. Last year, the American Culinary Federation launched a specialized certificate in culinary cannabis edibles available through our online learning center. Let's meet today's guest chef, Nathan Koscielski, CCE. He is an associate professor of culinary arts at the Niagara Falls Culinary Institute and Niagara County Community College, and has been with it for the last 8 years. Before starting at NFCI, Chef Nathan taught at the secondary level for 9 years as a high school culinary arts instructor, where he was awarded the Cafe and Kendall College Green Runner-Up Award for creating a true farm-to-table program. Chef is recognized for creating the State University of New York's first ever credit-bearing culinary cannabis-focused lecture lab courses. He began teaching the first culinary cannabis lecture style course entitled Culinary Cannabis and Edibles during the spring semester of 2021, which was 4 months before the New York State bill, which enacted the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act, passed. At the completion of the lecture course, students can test for the ACF Specialized Certificate of Culinary Cannabis Edibles. At this time, I'll pass the presentation over to Chef Nathan. Please take it away, Chef.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for logging in today on this webinar focused on culinary cannabis and how to produce rosin using cannabis. Cannabis is a new ingredient that I feel we must embrace as humans and definitely as chefs. We live in a global market right now, and to find new ingredients we've never worked with, to find new flavors we've never been experienced to, it's very hard in today's day and age. But cannabis allows for this. Many of us, veteran chefs that have been cooking in kitchens for 30, 40 years, they've never truly experienced the delicious flavor and aroma that can come from cannabis. Many of us think of cannabis and we think of that skunky, diesel, kind of gasoline smell that we can often associate with cannabis. But those are specific strains, specific cultivars that were bred that way for those terpenes, those flavor accents, as in tannins with wine. And in today's world, where we have so many cannabis farms growing beautiful handcrafted cannabis, there's a plethora of flavors that chefs can work with when dealing with cannabis. Cannabis has many, many medicinal benefits as well associated with it when using cannabis. I'm not here to tell all of you that all of you should start making all of your edibles from rosin. I don't believe that in the least bit. I believe rosin production should be one of the tools in the chef toolbox. A culinary cannabis chef should know how to properly decarb cannabis and infuse that into a high saturated fat oil, such as coconut oil or ghee, or into sugar, or into alcohol. But what chefs also need to understand is that we can use concentrates to cook with as well. Why concentrates are so important and so wonderful to cook with, instead of using raw cannabis flower or nugs, if you will. Most people, when they consume cannabis food, they have the idea, they get the flavor in the mouth of grass. The reason they get the idea of grass and that sensation, that taste of grass in the mouth, is because of all the chlorophyll that is in cannabis flower and cannabis nuggets. So when you decarb cannabis and you infuse that into your butter or into your oil, your butters and oil are going to turn very green. And yes, they will be loaded with THC and CBD and CBG and all the other wonderful cannabinoids, but it will also be filled with chlorophyll. Some people will come up to me and say, Chef, look at how green my cannabis butter is. That's not always necessarily a good thing. The more green your butter is, the more chlorophyll flavor you're going to get with your cannabis infusions. And not everyone wants chlorophyll flavor with their infusions, especially the new clientele that is experiencing cannabis for the first time. They don't want that pungent, grassy flavor. They want flavors more familiar with them. So using cannabis concentrates is a way to use cannabis and get those cannabinoids such as CBD, THC into your food, but leaving the chlorophyll out. So a pro to using cannabis concentrates is they're stronger and they have no chlorophyll with them, which is going to give you cleaner flavor. There's many different cannabis concentrates out there. There's more cannabis concentrates being developed every single year. One of my favorite concentrates of all of them is what's known as rosin. Why I enjoy cannabis rosin so much is because it is solventless free. So many of our cannabis extracts are going to pertain a solvent of some kind to strip the cannabinoids, to strip the terpenes away from the bioplant matter, the bioplant matter. So they're putting either butane or propane, and they're infusing this in with the cannabis plant matter and stripping the cannabinoids away, and then putting that into a centrifuge machine, hoping to get rid of all the solvents. That's adding a chemical into our food production. I always try to eat very, very clean. The other important aspect is so many people believe and know in the medicinal power of cannabis. And there is true medicinal power of cannabis. And if I am feeding my customers, if I am feeding my family, my friends, and I'm telling them how this cannabis has medicinal qualities to it, but on the other hand, it was made with a concentrate that was used propane or butane, it's hard for me to look them straight in the eye and say, this is good for you, when I know the cannabinoids were stripped away with propane or butane. So there's many wonderful cannabis extracts out there, spatter, wax, diamonds, just to name a few of them. Rosin will always hold a special place in my heart because it's a concentrate that is solventless free. Another great thing about rosin, so many concentrates, you would need a scientific laboratory with massive distillers, centrifuge machines to make many of these scientific cannabis concentrates. Rosin is something that anyone can make at home or in their professional kitchen. Rosin is a premium concentrate, so it will cost you a lot of money to purchase rosin straight up. Just like it would cost a chef an incredible amount of money to buy prepared stock. It would cost a chef an incredible amount of money to buy pre-cut filet mignon steaks. As chefs, we make our own stock. We trim and clean our own tenderloins to cut our own filet mignon steaks. I believe the same should be true with cannabis concentrates. Yes, we can go to the market, we can go to the dispensaries, and we can get many of the concentrates that we're not able to make at home. But if we're able to make a material that we're going to cook with in our own kitchens, I think we should. I think that's a great starting point. So rosin is chlorophyll free. Rosin has no solvents in it at all. And everyone can make it at home. So those are my reasons why I'm such a big fan of using rosin. There are only 3 main concentrates that are going to be solventless free. Teeth, which is your outer coating, a collection of trichomes, is a concentrate and technically solventless free. If you collect your teeth and you cure it and turn that into hash, hash is another concentrate that would be considered solventless free, also along with rosin. So those are the 3 main cannabis concentrates that that one would use that would contain no P or propane. Again, this is something that everyone can do at home in their professional kitchens. And the more you do rosin production, the better you will get at it. Just like the more each of you make your stock in your professional kitchen, the better your stocks will become. So just a little quick history. Rosin, you can make rosin from either flowers or hash. So my starting material can be cannabis flower, aka nugs, or my starting material can be cannabis hash. So hash is already a concentrate, so I'm fortifying a concentrate. I'm starting with hash and I'm pressing rosin out of hash, so I'm fortifying that concentrate. Both flowers and hash rosins are going to use what is known as a rosin press. A rosin press is a machine that creates an incredible amount of pressure and heat between two metal plates. For many, many years, people at home would actually try to make rosin themselves with hair straighteners, because hair straighteners are two hot plates that close on each other with pressure. So for a long time, people were making rosin at home with hair straighteners. I don't recommend that at all. You're paying a premium price for your cannabis flower. The last thing you want to do is try to make a concentrate with the machine that was used to straighten hair. Invest the right tool for the right job. You want to get a nice rosin prep. Many people believe that rosin is a popular cannabis concentrate that has just really became popular it came into vogue over the last couple of years. But rosin is actually based on an ancient African extraction process involving conical baskets and heat from the sun. So rosin has been around for a very, very long time. Rosin is also stronger in THC and CBD more than cannabis flower. Cannabis flower is usually going to test anywhere between 18 and 25%, where your rosin should usually test between 55 and 75% THC or CBD. So rosin is a much stronger starting point than starting with cannabis flower. So again, when you're making your infusions, you would have to put X amount of flour in to get the same amount of cannabinoids from just a little amount of rosin. So you're using less in your production. And again, it has none of that chlorophyll flavor. So it gives you a very clean, terpy flavor with rosin. Those are a lot of the reasons why rosin is so popular. What you can make rosin out of is starting again with flour or nuggets, with hash, or just heat, which is just the ground up trichomes on the outside of the cannabis flower. The higher the quality cannabis, the higher the quality the rosin. It's really that simple. Fire in, fire out. The rosin press is a beautiful, magical machine, but it can only produce rosin quality is equal to your starting cannabis flower. So you cannot take bad cannabis flower and expect it to come into beautiful rosin. You fire in, fire out. Types of rosin, you can make flower rosin, hash rosin, or even live rosin. Live rosin is very expensive and becoming very, very popular. What live rosin is traditionally when farmers grow their cannabis flower. After they grow their cannabis flower, they have to dry and cure the cannabis flower. Through the drying and curing process, one loses a tremendous amount of cannabinoids and terpenes through the drying and curing process. Just like if you have any dry herb. Dry parsley does not have as much flavor as fresh parsley. Dry basil does not have as much flavor as fresh basil. So when you dry your cannabis flower, you lose flavor. There are newer techniques, such as using liquid nitrogen. After harvesting your flower, instead of drying it, curing it, you flush your flower with liquid nitrogen, instantly freezing it and preserving as many cannabinoids as possible. When you press rosin out of cannabis flower that was flash frozen like that, that is what is known as live rosin, or also what's known as rosin. So if you ever hear the term rosin, that is rosin that is made with cannabis flower that was cryogenically frozen or with liquid nitrogen. What to look for in high quality rosin. Your high quality rosin should have a very amber color to it, and it should be very liquidy. The more terpenes, which are the flavor profiles of cannabis, the more terpenes you have in a concentrate, the more fluid that concentrate is. A perfect example of this would be sauce. Sauce is a very popular cannabis concentrate that is very liquidy. The reason it's so liquidy is because of the high amount of terpenes in it. How to use rosin? After you press your cannabis flower, some people believe that your rosin is decarb. Decarbonization happens around, you want to keep your cannabis flower under 250 degrees. We're pressing at about 210 degrees. So we are not going to fully decarb our cannabis within the pressing time frame. So after you press rosin, you do have to go through the process of decarbing rosin. So that is something that many people do not believe you have to do. A lot of folks believe that during the pressing, that decarbs your flour as well, and it does not. And then we have different types of rosin presses. We have manual presses, we have hydraulic presses, and we have electric presses. The bigger the facility you have, the bigger press you're going to need. Major facilities have hydraulic presses that are all computerized, and they keep constant touch of how much pressure and heat is being involved. Here at the Niagara Falls Culinary Institute, we have a small handheld press here. This is what's known as the Nugsmaster XP. There are many different rosin presses out there. I do not work for Nugsmaster. I have no affiliation with Nugsmaster. But when doing my research, I discovered this company, Nugsmaster, and they have an incredibly wonderful customer service. They make wonderful machines, and they're made in the US of A. They're based out of Arizona, and anytime that I've needed help with something and I call down to the Nugsmaster people down in Arizona, they're always super helpful. Nugsmaster sells several varieties of rosin presses, and this is what's known as the Nugsmaster SX. I can press about an ounce of flour per press with this machine. I can go as little as 3.5 grams, a typical eighth, or as much as 28.5 grams per press, your typical ounce. When pressing cannabis flower, there's a few things that you need first. One, you need some beautiful cannabis. The cannabis that we use at the Niagara Falls Culinary Institute is actually what is known as broad spectrum hemp flower. By federal legal definition, broad spectrum hemp flower has 0.3% less or THC in it. So this hemp flower has 0.3% less or THC in it, but it is loaded with CBD, CBG, and all the other wonderful cannabinoids out there. So I know so many of us were eager to work with cannabis because we think about THC and how fun THC, CBD, CBG, and all the flavor terpenes play a crucial role in the cannabis as well. So when making your rosin, you want to start off with some beautiful cannabis flower. After taking your cannabis flower, you want to trim your cannabis flower. Some people believe that you should take a cannabis grinder and grind your cannabis flower. I am just personally 100% against cannabis grinders. The best part of your cannabis flower is the trichomes. The trichomes contain so much of your cannabinoids and so much of your terpenes. The trichomes are located on the very outside of the flower. So when you put cannabis flower into a grinder and you're grinding your cannabis flower, all of the trichomes, which contain all the cannabinoids, all the THC, is stuck inside of your grinder. You look in your grinder and you see all that green dust in there. Those are the trichomes. That's the best part of the cannabis. So I recommend to all of you, throw those grinders away, get some gloves on, a nice pair of kitchen shears, and trim all of your cannabis flower. Never grind your cannabis flower. So I took some beautiful cannabis flower and we trimmed it using kitchen shears and having our gloves on to preserve as many cannabinoids as possible. And I usually like to just cut my cannabis pieces into the size of basically popcorn. So if you think about popcorn for rosin presses, I think that provides a wonderful surface area. If you have too big of a nug in your press, you're not going to extract as much rosin because you don't have as much surface area. If it's all dust that you're trying to press, you have too much surface area almost. So I find that trimming your cannabis flower into the size of either peas or popcorn is really pretty much a perfect size. So you got to start with wonderful cannabis flower. Remember, fire in, fire out. Trim it to the size of about popcorn pieces. After you trim your cannabis flower, you have to pick out the right micron bag. Micron bags refer to the bag that we're going to cook press the cannabis flower in. So a micron bag, micron size is all about the starting material. 1 micron is measurable to 1/1,000,000th of a meter. A 0.37 micron bag is great for keep, pass, or dry fit. So you can get 4 different micron bag sizes. You can get a 37 micron bag, which is absolutely wonderful for keep, pass, or dry sit. It's very, very fine. Think about this bag as you would a chinois or cheesecloth. It's very fine to keep all of the trichomes and all of the keef extracted into your rosin press. After the 37 micron bag, we have a 90 micron bag. A 90 micron bag is great for hemp or a little bit drier buds with a moisture content around 64%. So if you thought about the 37 micron bag as cheesecloth or chinois, think about the 90 micron bag as a china cap. Then you have a 120 micron bag, which are best for slightly sticky buds with a moisture content between 64 and 68%. Think about this as a colander. This has very wide gaps in it. And then finally, we have a 160 micron bag, which should only be used for the freshest, thickest buds with a moisture content between 68 to 75%. So if your buds are extremely fresh, extremely sticky, you want to use an extremely porous bag to allow all those natural oils to come out. That would be your 160 micron bag. But on the opposite side of the spectrum, if you're working with fine dust, very, very dry cannabis, you need a fine filtration device. That's where you would use a 37 micron bag. The bags that I'm currently showing you are 3.5 gram bags. You can put 3.5 grams of flour in each bag. You can get bags in 3.5 gram size, 7 gram size, and even 14 gram size, which would be a ½ ounce of pressing per press. So when thinking about your pressing rosin, one, you have to understand what cannabis flower you're using. Are you using a very dry cannabis flower or a very moist cannabis flower? Once you figure out the moisture content of your flower, you can figure out what micron bag size you want to use. You can press cannabis in a cannabis press without a micron bag, but you're going to get plant material in with your rosin. And remember, we're trying to keep all the plant material out. We're trying to keep all that chlorophyll out. So it's a wise investment to use these micron bags. They're really, you can reuse them once, maybe twice. They're a synthetic material, and you can buy them in a variety of sizes and micron thickness as well. So once you understand, and then you have to understand how much you're pressing. Are you pressing an 8 cannabis, 3.5 grams, or are you pressing 28.5 grams an ounce? So once you understand exactly what you're pressing, you got to prepare your micron bag. So a lot of rosin enthusiasts would put their cannabis flower directly into the bag just like this. And that is okay, but there's a step we can take with this bag to allow the bag to stay flat on the bottom. And this is what's known as bottle tech the bag. So when you take the bag and you're going to fold the bottom corners in to form two 90-degree right triangles. So I'm tucking one bottom of the bag in, and I'm going to tuck the other bottom of the bag in. And I basically almost like you're making a paper airplane. And now my two bottom corners are tucked in nice and tight into two 90-degree triangles. This is what's known as bottle tech, and this is going to allow your bag to stand flat on itself during the press. So now that I got my bag, bottle tech style, so again, you're going to just take your bag and poke in those two bottom corners for maximum extraction. We're working with cannabis. I want to preserve as many trichomes as possible. Whenever touching raw cannabis, I want to wear my gloves, safety and sanitation, and I'm going to take my cannabis flower and I'm going to pack it into my micron bag. The cannabis I'm using today, again, is hemp. So since it's a hemp style cannabis, it's a little bit on the drier side. So I chose a 90 micron bag. Again, the driest one you would use would be a 37 micron. My hemp is not that dry, so I'm using a 90 micron. But if I just got this right off the plant, it was just dried and cured, I would go with 160 micron. And I'm going to take my cannabis that I've been doing some pieces of popcorn that I trim because we don't like grinders, because all of your trichomes get stuck in that grinder, and all the trichomes are the best part of the cannabis. So throw those grinders away, and you're going to just pack your cannabis flower into this bag. I've learned from experience good things and bad things. One day when I was pressing cannabis flower into rosin, I did not have the proper size bag. I had 3.5 grams of flour, but only a 7-gram bag. And I said, what's the big deal? It's only 3.5 grams of flour, but I have a 7-gram bag. There's more than enough room in the bag. What happened was all the rosin, when I was extracting it, got stuck to all that empty bag. So one thing I've learned from my experience, use the right size bag for the press you are doing. If you don't have the right size bag, get the right size bag, but you don't ever want to understuff your bag. If you overstuff your bag, you can have what is known as blowout, where the bag is going to blow out and you're going to get biomass material all in throughout your rosin, which again is not what you want to do. So once you fully pack your bag and you take your time and pack it really, really nicely, you can see how that bag hopefully is just standing just vertically right on your own. And that's all because we took the time to fold those two bottom right corners in to form those two right triangles. And that is going to give us so much better of a press. When making rosin, ideally, you're looking for about 30% yield. So there is a lot of loss with the rosin. So any little trick you can do to maximize your yield percentages, you really want to do, such as this bottle tech style of the folding. Next, with the rosin press, we have it preheated to 207 degrees. You can really press anywhere between 195 degrees to about 210. You don't want to get much too above that, because the boiling point for your cannabinoids and terpenes, again, is around 240ish. So you want to definitely stay under that. I'm at 207 right now. These are two different hot plates right here that have been heating up. So I'm going to just release, and when I preheat my press, I bring the plates together. The two hot plates touching each other are going to heat up faster and more evenly than if they're separated. So I'm going to just release the press, and you're going to see that bottom plate fall down. I'm going to re-tighten the press. I have a piece of parchment paper that I'm going to slide into the middle of the Nug plates to help collect the rosin on. So I just take my parchment paper that I cut into a small sheet, and I'm going to place that in the press. And I have two magnets here to help hold that parchment paper into place. And I'm just going to lay that parchment paper on there just like that. I don't ever want to press directly on a plate, because all your rosin is going to stick to the plate. So you have to press on parchment paper. You do not want to use wax paper, because that wax is going to melt away from the wax paper. Ideally, in a perfect world, remember, I'm always talking about cannabis being used as a medicinal and the health benefits from it. Ideally, I have brown parchment paper right now, not the white bleached parchment paper, because again, I'm worried about every health benefit possible. So if I was really trying to do this for maximum medicinal qualities, I would use a non-bleached brown parchment paper. So I have my cannabis in here in the bottleneck bag, and I'm going to fold the top of the bag over just like you would fold the side of a birthday gift. And I'm just going to fold that over and do a nice little pouch. And I'm going to slide that up on into the machine in between the two plates. So I have my cannabis and the micron bag in between the two plates. The plates have been heated up to 270 degrees. Depending on how much cannabis you're pressing is going to tell you how much pressure you need to build up and how long you need to go for. If you're pressing about an eighth of cannabis, 3.5 grams, you want to go to 400 to about 700 PSI. If you're going to 7 grams, you probably want to go almost up to 1,000 PSIs. If you're going to do 14 grams like we are doing right now, we want to go all the way up to almost 2,000 PSIs. And we're going to do this for about 90 seconds to 2 minutes. I do also have to let you know, Nug Smasher does also have an awesome app that you can use as well for different strains, different cultivars, a great chat room for people to explain how they've been using their rosin press. As I'm starting this process, I'm not going to start the timer until I start seeing pressure built on my machine. So right now, the cannabis is just sitting between the two plates, and I'm going to slowly start pumping this handle, making sure my cannabis is right on the center of those plates, and I'm just slowly starting to build pressure up. I don't need to go too quickly. I'm just slowly building pressure up. If you pump pressure too quickly, that risk blowout again for your rosin bag. And you don't want your cannabis blowing out of the cannabis bag, which is known as a blowout. So I'm just slowly building pressure. The room, I wish we had smell-o-vision because the room is getting very aromatic. It smells like cannabis because it's starting to heat up on both sides of the plate. So I'm getting that aromatherapy from all those terpenes. It smells terrific in here. And again, I'm just still pumping. You can see these plates are getting closer and closer together. And these plates are 207 degrees each. So it's 207 on the top, 207 on the bottom. And I'm smushing that cannabis to about 2,000 pounds per square inch to extract the natural oils in this cannabis known as rosin. And this is the chlorophyll-free, beautiful cannabis extract. And I still have no pressure left on my dial, so I've not began the timer. I'm starting to see the dial, the pressure needle go. So I'm going to start my timer on the clock, and I'm going to go for about 90 seconds to 2 minutes. Once I start building pressure, I don't want to immediately pump like a lunatic up to that 2,000 PSI. Just want to keep slowly pumping, keep slowly pressing, and extracting as many of those cannabinoids and terpenoids as possible. As you can see, I'm really putting some strength into this. This is where some of those more electronic presses, one would not have to do it manually because it's an electric press, but this is what's known as a manual press. Got it up to about the 2,000 PSIs. And now for the next few seconds or so, I just have to keep applying pressure to it. If I stop, if I remove my hand off of the handle, my pressure gauge immediately starts falling. So I want to maintain a consistent pressure of around 2,000 PSI. So I'm leaving a little pressure on that handle, just keeping it around 2,000 for about that 60 to 90 seconds. If you do large batches, again, this is where you would want an electronic one. But if you're only pressing a few times a week in your restaurant, it's a good workout. Once I got this press going, I'm going to want to release these plates. So one thing you really want to do Now that we've got the parchment paper held up together, we can take those magnets off. That way, when I release the plates, it's just going to fall very naturally. And I'm going to start releasing the presser very, very soon. Now, I want you to remember, this is hemp again, and this is drier. So you might look and be like, that's all the rosin you get from the cannabis? Rosin is twice the strength. It's an artisanal product. And it's much stronger, so you don't need as much. I'm going to just start slowly releasing this wheel now to stop the presser. And the bottom plate is going to naturally fall to the bottom. And I have two cooling plates here that I can slide this right onto and allow that to cool to harden up that rosin. The harder your rosin is, a little bit easier it's going to be able to scrape up. So this is what we've been trusting right here. Oh, that's exactly what we're looking for. You can see on the outside of this is what's known as the puck now. This was a cannabis puck where we had that 14 ounces of cannabis flower, and that it was pressed with 2,000 pounds of square inch suppressor at 270 degrees top and bottom. And that produced this beautiful sap, this extract right here, known as a rosin. This is the rosin that you are looking for. And you would take this now, and we're going to cool this down, and we can use what is known as a dab tool and scrape all of this rosin up and collect it. Silk mats, I know I'm talking to a bunch of chefs out there. So silk mats are also a really great tool to help collect your rosin on, because it is so incredibly sticky. Once you collect all of your rosin using your dab tool and you collect it all, you want to keep your rosin stored in the refrigerator. You lose lots of flavors storing it at room temperature. If you want to get a silicone container of some kind, silicone again, because rosin is so sticky, you put it in this silicone rosin container and store this right inside your refrigerator, just as so, and get it out as needed. Now we have the puck left. And some of you might be thinking, is there anything I can do with that puck? Because you pressed it, we got all that delicious, wonderful rosin out of there. Now what do we do with the puck? This should be all profit in your business right now, because what we have here is a rosin. This would make you money, your money back, and a little bit of profit. So this would make you money back and a little bit of profit as well. Your puck should be all profit. After we collect, after you press about 15 different presses of cannabis, you're going to end up with 15 pucks. And these pucks still have lots of cannabinoids and terpenoids left in them. So what I like to do at this point is I have an electric metal hot plate stirrer here, and I like to take my pucks and I will put them in my beaker with MCT oil, and I will allow that to heat up. And because it's an electric magnetic plate that shakes, it's going to allow all those cannabinoids with the heated MCT oil to extract anything that's left on those pucks. And after I get one puck extracted, I'll take it, I'll squeeze off any extra of those cannabinoids, and I'll do the same thing, and I'll keep fortifying my MCT oil with about 15 different pucks. After you take about 15 pucks and infuse that into your MCT oil, this is what I make all my gummies with. So all my gummies that I make are made with leftover rosin pucks. And again, this should just be all profit in the bank for you folks, utilizing your pucks that way. The cannabis, the rosin itself, how would we cook with this now? We now need to decarb this technically. So there's a couple different ways we could go about decarbing. We can put it in a glass mason jar and into a low temperature oven, about 230 degrees for about a half hour. That would be one way to fully decarb. And then you could just take it, swirl it inside some chocolate, swirl it inside a sauce, and you would just add this at the last minute, your decarb rosin. and it's not going to add grass flavor to your food. It's going to give you your cannabinoids, THC, CBD, and all of those beautiful terpenes. So rosin is a really great concentrate, again, to cook with. Another way you could decarb your rosin is in what's known as a rosin capsule. So a rosin capsule, you collect your rosin, you put it inside your silicone container, put that into this aluminum capsule, and you're actually going to press this into your nug smasher then, and heat this up for about 20 minutes, and that would decarb your rosin that way. So after about 20 minutes of being in this capsule, you would open this up, and your rosin would all still be in the silicone container, fully decarb. At that point in time, you just take a little at a time and add it into your finishing sauces, into your chocolate, into your sugar, however you see fit cooking it. Again, I want to really emphasize that rosin should not be the sole material that you're cooking with as a cannabis chef. You should know how to take raw flour and properly decarb it, and how to properly infuse that into alcohol, into sugar, into fat. I believe as a cannabis chef, you should be able to work with a variety of cannabis concentrates. Most large-scale production cannabis industries are going to use what's known as distillate. Distillate is a distilled cannabis concentrate that one would purchase that gives people precise dosing when doing large-scale products. So it would be very easy for me to go to a dispensary, buy distillate, and drop 1 drop of distillate onto each one of my food items and say, oh, now I infused all the food, I'm a cannabis shop. I don't want to say that's cheating, but I love to make things from scratch. I think so many of us do. That's why we're members of the ACF. So if I can take the time to talk to my farmer and talk to my cannabis farmer and say, I would love something that has a tropical aroma to it, or I would like something that had a blueberry aroma with it. And I work with my cannabis farmer, or I go into the dispensary and I say, just like you were going to a farmer's market, what is fresh today? I want to cook with the freshest product. And then once you get that cannabis flower back into your kitchen, yes, you can decarb it the traditional way, or you can use a variety of different methods such as rosin. Again, this should not be the only way you do cannabis edibles. I just think it's an important tool for chefs to have in their toolbox, how to make their own concentrates. And again, many concentrates we cannot make in our kitchens because we don't have the scientific equipment. This is actually something we can bring into our kitchens. We can show the customers what we are making. And it's just a wonderful way to end the stigma with negativity associated with cannabis. At this time, I'm wondering if we have any questions from the audience, anything specific that I might have missed or you want me to touch on a little more deeply.
Chef, the only question we've gotten so far has been, can you use the puck after pressing to make the rosin? And you kind of covered that already. So,
yeah, actually, well, I'm glad that I covered a lot of the questions. Just like a chef, because I'm always going to try to relate cannabis cooking into how the everyday chef can use it in his or her own kitchen, because it's a scary product to work with because so many of us are unfamiliar with it. Once you familiarize yourself with it, there's nothing to be scared of. So just like we understand when we have leftover products and we can turn that in soup de jour and we sell a whole bunch of soup that day in the restaurant, that's all money in the bank because that was all scrap that we would otherwise not utilize. Same thing with these pucks. There's many people that will throw the pucks away, but there's still a significant amount of cannabinoids and terpenes involved in them. And I'm not saying one puck alone would do enough for your edibles, but after you save 10 or 15 or so and you slowly infuse them into some MCT oil, it's a great way to just make extra profit for your business type establishment. The other thing I do want to talk about for sure is after you make your own rosin. So you're going to bring cannabis into your restaurant, and the cannabis you're bringing in should 100% be tested. You should have the cannabinoid profile and the terpene profile. So you want to know how strong that cannabis is that you're getting into your restaurant or your business or at home.
Hey, the irony, chef, is as you just started describing that, that was the question that came through. How do you know the dosage? So it's like you're reading the members' minds.
I'm putting myself in their shoes because I've been there. So again, another company that I have no affiliation with. I don't have any affiliation with Nug Smasher. They've just been a great company that has helped a cannabis chef out in New York State out of their goodwill. Another company that I'm really, really happy with is what's known as T-Check. T-Check is an app cannabis testing device that all of you can purchase. It costs about $300 to $400. And what you would do is you would take your rosin that you had and you would place it on your slide, your testing slide. Once you take your testing slide, you can plug it into your T-Check machine, and this hooks up Bluetooth to my phone. And I have an app on my phone that will give me the cannabinoid profile of this. So once I know how strong my rosin is, I can break it down into proper dosing. The T-Check machine, I live in New York State. In New York State, cannabis, thankfully, it is legalized. New York State has regulated testing sites that and dispensaries and farmers have to use. For locally around us, it's what's known as biotrack testing. If I was working in the restaurant and I was selling this product out to customers, I would take my pressed rosin and I would send it to the New York State certified testing site to test the rosin for exact percentages and for mold, stuff like that. Everything that is regulated in New York State. If you're not living in New York State, if you're not selling this to the masses and you're doing this at home for friends and family, I think the T-Check machine is a great device for at home, family, private catering events, stuff like that. If you're doing it on large scale masses, you definitely want to talk to your state testing site to get your rosin officially tested. But this can 100% be tested, and then you can know how to properly dose your customers.
Chef, we do have two more questions. Why do we have to decarb the flour?
That is an excellent question. That is a very scientific question. So all of our cannabinoids, THC, CBD, CBG, CBN, they all actually start off as THCA, CBDA. All of these chemical compounds have an acid molecule on the back end of them. And through the decarbonization process, we're removing that acid molecule and activating the cannabinoids. So it's not just THC and CBD you need to decarb. You must decarb all of your cannabinoids, and that acid molecule will prevent that chemical compound from entering in and working with your human endocannabinoid system. So by boiling off that acid molecule, it allows cannabinoids, THC, CBD, to be incorporated into your endocannabinoid system.
All right, next question. Can decarbed live rosin go straight into gummies without being infused into oil?
It can. It's just like any process. How much rosin you're putting in versus how much gummy mixture you are making. There could be issues with it. A lot of the time, soy and lithogen will always help stabilize stuff. But it is possible. But you could also encounter a few problems if you did not infuse the rosin directly into your MCT oil first.
You want to keep taking questions, or do you want to keep going?
I'm definitely happy to take a few more questions. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. At the beginning of the seminar, you mentioned you could take rosin form flour or something else. I could not understand what the other material was.
You can probably you can start making rosin with either what's known as cannabis flower, aka nugs. So you can start with nugs, or you can start with either keef, which is a collection of trichomes on the outside of the cannabis flower, what you find inside your grinder, or you can even start with hash. So artisanal type hash. Hash is a very traditional, very old school cannabis concentrate that has been made for hundreds of years. If you want to learn more about hash production, research Frenchy cannoli. It's just such a great name. I know it's his real name, Frenchy cannoli. Frenchy cannoli is one of the world. He was, fortunately, has passed. One of the world's greatest artisanal hash makers. And pressing rosin from hash is a wonderful thing because you're making a concentrate from flour, cannabis flour, and you're extracting the oils out of it to make rosin. But if you start the rosin production process with a concentrate already, like hash, you're going to just yield some beautiful and incredible rosin from that starting point of hash. So whenever making rosin, I start with raw, undecarb flour. You do not want to decarb your flour and then press the rosin. As you're decarbing your flour into a preheated 240-degree oven, you're evaporating away a lot of those natural water, natural oil, and your yield percentages will be horrible. So always decarb the rosin after pressing it. Never decarb the flour before pressing. So you can start with hash, you can start with keef, or you could start with undecarb cannabis flour. Those would be the three main starting points that you would start with when making rosin. The other great thing, I got all excited. The other great thing that you can do with the rosin press is brewers pressing hot. There are so many brewers that I know that are pressing hops with a rosin press to get different flavors into their beer. There's been times where I've pressed rosemary and other herbs as well. So I know this is known as a cannabis rosin press, but you can press the natural oils out of a variety of foods as well.
All right, we got another question. Can you separate out the THC and CBD if you just want to use the CBD?
You yourself cannot separate the THC and CBD yourself. You kind of have a couple of choices here. One, kind of like what I did, we started off with some beautiful hemp flour that is very, very high CBD and low THC. Knowing that my flour is high CBD and low THC to start with, my rosin is going to be high CBD, low THC. I could then also take traditional cannabis flour and press that, knowing that that's high THC and low CBD, and have several versions of rosin in my kitchen. Some that is high CBD, some that is high THC. But you yourself cannot separate the cannabinoids yourself. You can buy, and this is another cannabis concentrate. It's what's known as isolate. It's one of my least favorite things to cook with in the cannabis world because the isolate is flavorless, colorless, and odorless. It's just a fine powder that you can basically drop into water, and now that water is infused with THC. To me, that is not cooking. For large scale production, if I'm a large company doing major distribution and I need things to be exactly precise and made exactly the same way every time, I get the isolate part. Working in my kitchen, I love experimenting with new foods, new recipes. I'm not a big fan of isolate, but if you're someone that wanted to use just specifically CBD or THC, you could purchase isolate or distillate that was specified in one of those two cannabinoids.
So we're all of a sudden we're getting tons of questions, and we're going to run out of time to do the question, Chef. So I think it'd be good. What we'll do is we'll pass these questions on to Chef Nathan and have them answer those for us afterwards. And then another question I'm going to ask you for. A couple people have been asking pretty much the same thing. So this is awesome. Are you able to send a list of favorite cannabis books and the details of the equipment used for this group? So I think that'd be a good follow-up for us to be able to get from you as well, Chef.
Absolutely. I know I did send out a recipe. I typed up a recipe on how to press cannabis flower. And I know that was going to be distributed via email to everyone that registered for our webinar today. So those of you that registered, you will be getting an email with my rosin recipe and a whole bunch of typed up information with rosin. As far as my favorite cannabis books, there are so many. But the accredited ACF books that you would need for your specialized certificate in culinary cannabis, such as edibles and bong appetit, would be two that I would really recommend, because those two tech will really get you ready for the ACF specialized certificate in culinary cannabis. And those are the two books that ACF recommends themselves. The first one is known as Edibles, and the second one is Bong Appetit. So these are two books off the top of my head that I would highly recommend.
Chef, and I'll stop, but this is going to be the last question. The question is, will you be at the National Convention in July? I know the answer to this one. Why don't you share it?
I am. I will be at the National Convention in July in Phoenix. I am extremely excited about the National Convention. I will be doing a presentation there as well. I will be presenting on cannabis terpenes. Just a quick kind of intro to it. So hopefully I can get some of you folks very excited. I've been a cannabis enthusiast my entire life. I've been a chef my entire life. When the two worlds started colliding, I got so excited because of the THC and CBD. And the more I'm cooking with cannabis, the more I realize how little the THC, the terpenes, the flavor and aroma profile of each strain means everything in the cannabis industry and in cooking. So I'm going to be giving a wonderful presentation about the different cannabis terpenes associated with different strains and how to match those with specific food items, like lemon roasted chicken with a citrus haze strain. We want to match our flavor profiles of cannabis with food, just like we match our flavor profiles of wine with our food. And I will be doing an in-depth discussion about flavor profile with cannabis terpenes at the National Convention.
Well, we're looking forward to that, Chef. Chef, any closing thoughts before we close out for the afternoon?
Yes, I'll try my hardest not to keep it long. Be a lifelong student. We hear this all the time, and it does not matter your personal opinion on cannabis. This is what I've had to explain to people. I am a chef. I am here to feed the masses. I understand you are what you eat. You are what you eat. Cannabis is on this earth for good things. And cannabis, if used properly and safely, can be a wonderful ingredient for each of us to cook with. And I often think about what it would have been like to be a chef in the 1900s. I think about Charles Ranhofer, the first chef in America to serve an avocado. He called it an alligator pear at the time. And how exciting it must have been to go to the farmer's market and say, what is this? And say, oh, it's an avocado pear. An avocado never got to experience that. We live in a global market. We've got to try all the different foods. This is the first and maybe the only time in our chef's profession that we get to experience a new ingredient with unlimited flavor, aroma, and medicinal qualities to it. And I don't know of another ingredient that has the variety of flavor, the variety of aroma, and the variety of medicinal benefits as cannabis. And it's a magic ingredient, and I'm just trying to end the stigma that is associated with negative cannabis. and use it as a positive thing. And I appreciate all of you in, because all of you logging in, this is the first step we take to normalizing it. The more we talk about cannabis, the more normal we make it, the more webinars we have, the more everyday social it becomes. So I truly thank all of you for logging in and taking your time today.
Oh, we thank you, Chef Nathan, especially. It was the first time I met you. I knew I had to have you on here, and I knew that we had to have you at the conference. So I'm looking forward to that. And we want to give you a huge virtual round of applause as we thank you, Chef, for a very informative presentation. We appreciate you taking the time to share your important insights with the culinary cannabis with our ACF community of professionals. Honestly, it was extremely great info. Really loved listening to it, and I know our members did as well. Please be on the lookout for the survey you'll receive the next day or so, which you'll need to complete to earn your continuing education hours, ACF members. We hope you'll join us on our next webinar on April 24th as we cover preventing wasted food with the Natural Resources Defense Council and honor Stop Food Waste Day. Then on May 15th, Shed Edward Adele will talk about contemporary barbecue as an introduction to May's trend on modern barbecue. We also look forward to seeing all of you at the ACF National Convention, which we were just talking about. You're going to have to see Chef Nathan there. And we're going to be in Phoenix, July 14th to 17th. It's going to be the You Cannot Miss It Culinary Education event of the year for sure. To learn more about the upcoming webinars and the ACF National Convention, visit acfchefs.org and click on the events tab. On behalf of the ACF National Office, thank you again to our presenter for bringing us this opportunity. And thank you all to you, chefs, for joining us today. Hope you all have a wonderful, great day. Thank you.